Okay, here we are once again. You are at Real Turkey channel, where we give you the latest news and commentary on Turkish economy, politics, and business. Nowadays, it's all about coronavirus, so don't expect anything new. I wish I could talk about Turkish soccer and basketball, but all leagues have been postponed, and half the athletes are down with corona diagnosis. I wish them well. We will start officially in a few minutes. I arrive early because at my age, dementia is setting in, and I'm not certain whether I'm at the right channel. But we will soon uh, get officially started. Uh, and I'm trying not to read the comments because they they distract me. Uh, but I think one of our audience is asking whether they can ask questions. They can comment. They can post their questions as comments, and I shall try to answer them. But turning this into a live chat program has unfortunately not worked in the past because there are already a lot of trolls there trolling this, and I just keep laughing when I read their comments. I'm sorry. Uh, and can't really do a serious Q&A session. So these are going to be semi-live, like I am, medically speaking alive, but mentally speaking, perhaps not so much so. Okay, a few more minutes, and I see uh, more people arriving by the minute. Needless to say, please do share if you find value in the content and subscribe. I think we are still one of the few channels from Turkey which broadcasts in English, in poor English. And I think Turkey being a very large economy, there is value in terms of disseminating accurate and timely information and analysis on it so people can make wise decisions. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to Real Turkey channel. Once again, this is your loving and self-imprisoned host, Atilla Yeşilada, in an ill-lit room with very poor audio and video equipment, trying to reach you from Istanbul. Today, once again, we're going to talk about Turkey's corona epidemic, and it is an epidemic at this point. I'll give you the numbers in a few minutes, and how it might shape up in the future, and what the human health and economic costs will be. Needless to say, these are forecasts. Very few of them are mine. I try to read the literature and all the investment banks and agencies who forecast on Turkey and reflect their views to you. Okay, the topic of today's broadcast is what if Turkey were to become an Italy? Italy really saddens me, a lovely country I visited several times, where the caseload has reached 80,000. And I'm rounding up numbers. I'm really sorry. As you see, I don't have a prompter or a pre-written text in front of me, so I do my best as far as my memory allows. Italy has 80,000 cases, and it increases by the day. Yesterday, they reported 650 deaths. And from Financial Times, I look at the trajectories for every major country I'm following to see whether the caseload is lightening or whether the first derivative is turning flat or negative. Unfortunately, this cannot be said. So far, the best news is that the Italian people are brave, and the bad news is that the infection or outbreak seems to be spreading from the North Lombardy region towards the south. Now, anyone who is interested enough in following this broadcast has probably also followed Italy, so they know the human drama that's been experienced there, and the economic costs. So far, there are no official forecasts that I could find, but it is clear that the entire Eurozone, in fact, the EU, is going to spend the second and the third quarters of the year in recession. And Italy, according to some sources I consulted, may lose 20% of its national output on a quarterly basis if it can't control the virus. I think one important lesson to learn from Italy is that total lockdowns, curfews, is the only thing that works in countries like us who are of Mediterranean origin and tend to socialize and like to go out as soon as possible. And more importantly, a curfew is not enough. The nation must work with the state and the health authorities to abide by the safety regulations and health regulations. You may declare a curfew, but if that doesn't, if people don't abide by it and continue to socialize, then it's not much of a help. This is what I'm going to say about Italy. Perhaps a few words on world and world economy as well. I know a lot of medical authorities claim that summer will kill this virus, which I can't really confirm. I think the world has lost the year 2020 and is looking into the abyss of a deep recession. I've been in the finance business for 30 years. I've never seen institutions like IMF or International Institute of Finance or Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, whatever, change their forecasts so frequently and with such pessimism underlying it. I think now everyone agrees that we shall have a global recession. What really scares me is not the recession. If that's the only price the world were to pay for getting rid of this corona infection, it wouldn't make much of a difference. But I'm afraid we will have a financial crisis. So far, limitless money injections, liquidity injections by Fed, its swap lines with other major central banks, and today the ECB's decision to buy assets without limit have helped ease the liquidity strains, but nevertheless, external financing for countries like Turkey, emerging market nations, remains difficult. Now, after this lengthy intro, let's get back to Turkey and Turkey's case. Turkey's coronavirus drama has developed very rapidly. The first diagnosis was made on 11th of March, and since then, the health authorities have diagnosed 2,500 cases. Currently, roughly 5,000 tests are being conducted each day, and on average, 500 new cases are being discovered. So there is a diagnosis to test ratio of roughly 0.1 or 10%. The government's objective is to increase that to 15,000 tests per day. And I project that at that time span, we will have 1,500 new cases. So far, deaths have not been too bad. I think less than 60 deaths, but a lot of people in intensive care, which is burdening the already meager resources of the health system. Why do I think Turkey might turn into an Italy? How do we get from, say, 2,500 cases to 80,000 cases? There are several reasons behind my thinking. Well, first of all, several Turkish medical authorities have warned the administration and, more importantly, the people that it's going to get much worse. Two, so far, testing is not done on a wide scale. It appears that Turkey's approach is to have sick people come to hospitals and other healthcare facilities, then test them. Whereas I think the right approach would be to identify high-risk groups and conduct wide-scale testing among them. Who or where are these high-risk groups? Well, first of all, Iran, another brave country, the people of which I like very much, has been devastated by coronavirus. Then Iraq is slowly capitulating. It already has a very weak health and central administrative system. And now, my greatest suspicion has come unfortunately true, and Syria is reporting cases. 2 days ago, we have seen Russian Navy vessels full of ambulance and military equipment pass Bosphorus towards Syria. And the borders with these three countries, even though they're officially closed, are very porous. There are a lot of human trafficking and stuff. So any province that borders on these three nations ought to be subject of wide-scale testing, as well as illegal migrants. Some of them have been to the Greek border and they have returned. We don't know where they are. There is no contact tracing, etc., etc. So I think it's reasonable to forecast that cases will continue to grow. Secondly, already the health system shows signs of stress, and this is very important in terms of dealing with the crises. What kind of stress? First of all, yesterday, uh, 24 family medicine practitioners have been diagnosed with coronavirus, which means our health professionals are either not ready or are not equipped uh, properly to deal with a virus that has proven to be incredibly resilient and outstandingly, outrageously infectious. Two, there are several surveys conducted by Turkish Physicians Association and other third parties, which shows at least half of the medical staff, that's nurses and male healthcare providers, have not been properly trained for such a crisis scenario. And there is currently a shortage of masks, ventilators, etc., etc., all of which would, proliferate the epidemic, simply because the healthcare system is unable to take care of everyone who complains from coronavirus. That is the situation currently in Spain, where doctors have to uh, implement triage, which is a wartime expression, meaning you focus on those you can save, and if someone is certain to die, pray for them. I hope Turkey doesn't come to that stage, but there is a strong likelihood that it will get there because the government refuses to declare a nationwide curfew. As I've said, there are other surveys which shows maybe 50% of the nation either doesn't think corona is going to infect them, or doesn't care, or has been ill-informed. In a nation like this, there are really no widespread remedies to stop the spread of the virus, but to lock people down for at least 2-3 weeks. That seems to be the only method that's working. And until that decision is made by the government, I shall always fear that Turkey will return into an Italy. Also, there is perception among the government, which is also infecting the nation, that within a month or perhaps 2 months, this outbreak will be under control and we'll be able to go back to our normal lives, which really, if you ask my opinion, is unrealistic. So let's look at the economic costs of that so far. As you know, our finance minister is proud to repeat at every occasion that Turkey will register 5% GDP growth this year, which I just laugh at this. It's a pipe dream. Uh, we have seen the first signs of stress in the Turkish economy, which are reflected to the statistics yesterday. There are several confidence surveys, one conducted by central bank called the Real Sector Confidence Index, but actually only measures the manufacturing industry. And it declined 8 percentage points on a month-on-month basis. All of this data are seasonally adjusted, falling below the 100 line, which means the manufacturers are becoming extremely pessimistic, which is going to bear negatively on the employment situation. To further confirm this kind of news, the automotive industry is kaput. It's not their fault. Not too many people are going to galleries to look for new cars, and there is a shortage of spare parts because the entire EU is under a lockdown, and Turkey either imports European brands, which are very popular in Turkey, or spare parts and parts for its domestic production. It is spreading to textiles. Today we heard that Sarar, an international brand, which also has shops in New York City as well as other major cities, has stopped production temporarily. And of course, retail is devastated. Organized retail, which takes place in shopping centers, has been hurt by the fact that most of the shopping centers are either voluntarily or by municipality orders are now shut down. And of course, street traffic has also declined because at least 50% of Turkish people understand the risks of social contact. We also received data on sectoral. The Turkish Statistics Agency, Turkstat, covers construction, services, and retail. Of these three, services and retail has declined on a month-on-month basis. Confidence in the construction industry has increased. That's probably because the government is heaping lavish subsidies for people to buy houses. But if there is a lockdown, I don't think the situation will improve there as well. More importantly, I look at the sub-indices, which showed that retailers and service providers have been overly optimistic over the last 3 months, and their sales have turned out to be much less than they've anticipated. So they've built up inventory, which will make the numbers get worse in the coming months if they can't liquidate that inventory, because they will buy less from producers who in turn will lay off workers and reduce production. It appears to me that the second quarter is completely lost for the Turkish economy. We should be talking about what type of a hit economic growth here. Only for the rest of the year, I'm sorry, the comment. I keep reading the comments, and I am mentally not agile enough to do both reading and broadcasting, but we're getting towards the end of that. So I am really. You should read the commentary rather than watching me. But anyhow, let me finish this. Second quarter is lost. We're talking about how deep the recession will be rather than whether there will be one. The second half of the year depends on just how vigilant the government is, whether it can announce sufficient financial incentives for businesses to stay open, and of course, a lot of help. I mean, because the summer season is driven by tourism, and so far there is no tourism left. Even if Turkey is completely virus-free, our main visitors, the Russians, the Europeans, and Arabs from Middle East, are in no mood to travel. So if tourism withers on the vine over the summer, Turkish recession would continue to the third quarter, and then we'll see the fourth quarter. Looking at forecasts, I read Societe Generale is still forecasting 2% growth for the entire year. Capital Economics, another independent research institution which I respect very much, has gone to negative. International Institute of Finance forecast 0.6% growth, with population growth of 1.5% per annum. This translates into lower per capita growth. And Moody's today has also reduced Turkey's growth forecast. So it appears to me that even under the best circumstances, Turkey will record zero growth this year. And if pessimistic scenarios take place or materialize, we will be talking about a deep recession and maybe millions of employment losses, because the packages provided so far don't provide enough cover for businesses to retain their workers. And in any case, they can't if there's a national lockdown, because they have weak capital structures. The positive news is, of course, on the current account side. Turkey won't have a current account deficit this year. Simply, we are not importing much. And oil prices, our main import item, has come down to $25 or so. And more importantly, in spot market, oil is trading at around $10. There is a huge glut, which will tremendously benefit Turkey vis-a-vis energy costs. And our exports, well, they'll only keep up with last year's pace if other countries open their borders to us. Inflation, of course, remains a concern, but my concern right now, a primary concern, is not inflation, but unemployment. Even if the measures are inflationary to save people from unemployment, they should be implemented. But the inflation outlook, of course, improves because we have taken a huge demand shock. No one is buying anything. Who can raise their prices? But I can't provide finite numbers or definitive figures simply because we may also be experiencing a supply shock. That is, companies will not be able to produce, which will, of course, raise prices as there's a scarcity. And of course, finally, Turkish lira, like all other emerging market currencies, is under severe stress. And as I've said in previous forecasts many times, that if the Turkish lira slumps, then it immediately passes through to inflation and then onto corporate balance sheets. The indebted companies can't pay off their debts, so they have to close factories and lay off their workers. So it's rather a pessimistic scenario for the next 3 months or so. And even though I don't believe it, I just hope that with the summer heat, the virus will dissipate. Otherwise, Turkey has lost the year 2020 in terms of public health and the economy. Wow, it has been 22 minutes. Thank you very much for watching this broadcast. I will broadcast as soon as there is another important development or I have some other important piece of data or analysis to share with you. Once again, if you like the content, please share and subscribe to our channel. This is Atilla Yeşilada from Istanbul saying goodbye and stay at home, stay well. Bye-bye.